We will be starting in a few minutes, so if you need to refresh your coffee or get an extra dessert or whatever you might like to do, would you do that now, please? Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If I could ask you to take your seats and have your attention, please. I'd like to begin by acknowledging some of our notable people present. Is there no one here?
Yeah, she is.
I'm supposed to be in the
Yeah.
center, but maybe she's not here.
No, she's here. She's here. Where's my money?
I'm right here.
Steve Lehman, I'm writing the Conservative Party of Canada nominee for London West. Oh, there.
Hey, girl.
Welcome out. Rob Black, FPP for Alpha Middle Tech London. I'm here. So he's my very favorite MPP. My favorite.
I'm your only MPP.
My favorite MP is here as well, Karen Vecchio. wonderful to have you all here. I'm supposed to announce that our next event will be on February the 2025. And management will be on route to the MP for for that event, so please mark your calendars for that date. I would like to invite Josh Underwood up to do Doug's introduction. Just the order of march here, so Josh, introduction, Doug come up, we'll do his remarks. Doug has agreed to moderate the questions and answers. I would just ask that your questions be relatively short and to the point. We're here to hear Doug's point of view, not everybody in the room. Now, Josh Underwood has many claims to fame for some non-covered videos. So what I want to leave with is most noteworthy accomplishment. He is in his final year at the IB business. So, I also graduated many years ago in the program you're in, Josh. So good job there. He is also the campus conservative president for UWO, campus conservative. He has been special assistant as deputy leader of the opposition. So he's in politics. He's also published in the Financial Post, somewhere else. I don't know where that is. And been recognized as one of Canada's top outstanding leaders. So we're very fortunate to have Josh here. He also probably lowers the average age by 20 years. We're happy to have more young people involved. And I don't know if you know or not, but students eat for free here. So if you know any students would like to attend, please let them know. We'll get them on the list and have them here as well. Josh, over to you.
Thank you, everybody.
Can you allow me? I'm going to ask
As I mentioned, my name is Josh. I'm just going to those of you who haven't had the pleasure of meeting me yet. I should say, for those of you for whom I haven't had it's no secret, as Rod mentioned, that I might look at a place in a room like this. And many of you are probably wondering what the heck I'm doing here, specifically what the heck I'm doing up on stage. And well, I'm here for the same reason that all of you are here, and that is that I'm a conservative. And many of you look at me and say, wow, people that look like this aren't supposed to be conservatives. We're supposed to be camping out on the campus lawn at Western and doing all the things. But to me, politics is not about what happens today or tomorrow or in a week. It's about what happens in a year, a decade, or a century. And the people who have to live with those decisions that are impacting what happens in a year, a decade, or a week. People like me, people who live in my generation, who want to enjoy the same quality of life, or a better quality of life than the ones that many of you have been fortunate to have lived. And how do we do that? Well, we do it through conservative values. We do it through upholding the principles that have made Canada the country that it is after over 150 years. That's how we do it. And a big part of doing that is upholding our rule of law, upholding our democratic systems, and as we like to say, ensuring peace, order, and good governance. A huge part of that is Ontario's Attorney General. So it's a pleasure to be able to stand up here and introduce him today. Not just introduce him, but to thank him for all of the work that he's doing on behalf of not only young people, but people right across this province. He's got a lot of food on his plate, and not just because the lunch here is very good, but as you know, the Liberal government made things very difficult for us, whether it's the catch and release bail system, whether it's a broken criminal justice system, whether it's an out of control immigration system, go on and on and on. But to borrow the words of another Doug, we know that he is going to get it done. So, Mr. Downey, thank you for being here. Thank you for all your work. It is my pleasure to introduce Doug, who's going to share some thoughts with us today, much more eloquently than I have. But thank you for joining us today. Please give a big applause.
So just do a mic check to make sure that's all working the way you want it to. Perfect. Thank you, Josh. I got involved in politics. Can you hear me? No? Oh, little. You want this mic? All right. Perfect. That works for me. The mic I have on me on my lapel is for the recording, I guess. All right. You have to be adaptable in politics because you never know what's going to happen. And every time I think I know what's going to happen, something else happens. So that's my general operating rule day to day. But look, I want to start by thanking Rob Flack for being here and Karen for being here, because I know what busy schedules look like. So thank you for taking the time to be here and break bread with friends and people who have an interest in what we do. Politics is a very interesting profession. I'm going to give you a bit of a context on how I landed in this seat, if I can start there, so you can sort of gauge why I do what I do a little bit. So I started off. I was a court clerk, the counter clerk. So when you went into the courthouse to file a document or to pay a ticket or something, that was a summer job for me. I did that for a couple of summers, and that was a while ago. I then went on after my undergrad to do a master's degree in judicial administration, so like public administration, but for the courts. There were only 6 of us in the program. Very, very interesting program. Gave me a view of how the courts were built and how they operate. And then I went and worked as a court registrar for a year. And coming out of that master's program, there was a judge who was teaching us one of the courses, Judge Kovacs from St. Catharines. And Judge Kovacs said, "You should be a lawyer." And I said, "I have no intention of being a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. It's not my path." And he said, "When you realize that I'm right, you let me know and I'll send you a letter." So I went off and worked as a court registrar for a year, when my job was teaching new judges how to do what they do, the paperwork, the back office, how the system actually works, because they would normally just come in as a lawyer. They didn't know the back office part. So that was my job. It gave me a real chance to meet some interesting individuals who had just come through a life-changing, career-changing, life-changing experience being appointed as a judge. And I got to see them right at the front end. And it showed me all the humanity that is built into our system. We think about judges as these untouchable, other people, but they're really just you and I with a very cool job. And so I did that for a year, and then I realized I couldn't make change in the system that I wanted to without the law degree, because all the stakeholders making change in the legal system were lawyers, either as now judges or as practicing lawyers. So I phoned Judge Kovacs. First words out of his mouth were, "Where am I sending the letter?" And sure enough, he is probably the reason I got into law school, which is, a good life example for me of opening doors for people. As Josh is on his journey for success in whatever that is, whatever that looks like, it's things like today that open the door, that help create profile. People open doors for me, and I'm so thankful for that. So I encourage all of you to think about not just family members, nieces and nephews and others, but who's got a talent? Who's got a talent that needs to be encouraged? Just a word of encouragement sometimes. And or as far as writing a letter if you're in that spot. That propelled me into the legal world in a different way. Went to Dalhousie, got my law degree, and then wanted to practice law. I wanted to be a real lawyer. I didn't want to just have the law degree. And I started practicing law, and I fell in love with the law. I really did. I did some litigation stuff. I got to appear in front of Roy McMurtry at Court of Appeal early days. I got to do some very interesting stuff. I became a real estate specialist and a corporate lawyer. So not necessarily a courtroom lawyer, but that was by choice. I wanted control over my lifestyle. I didn't want, nobody calls a real estate lawyer at 3 a.m. with an emergency. So, you do get those calls in criminal law. So I practiced law for many years. The individual that I ran into when I got an articling spot, I wanted access to Toronto, but not be in it. And so I landed in Aurelia, which is, about an hour and a half into Toronto with no traffic. And one of the counsel to that law firm was Doug Lewis. And Doug Lewis had been Minister of Justice, Government House Leader, Minister of Transport, a number of things under Mulroney. And him and I did not know each other before that chance encounter. And we became good friends. We started a law firm ourselves in 2001 with some other people, his wife and some other senior lawyers. And I practiced law for 20 years and then came to the provincial space. I did 2 terms as a municipal guy in Aurelia as well. That gave me a real feel for not just running campaigns, but actually the ability to make change. So that's where I come from, is I'm in politics because I want to make change. And I have this keen sense that I'm just passing through. We all are. And so you need to get as much done as you possibly can in the short period of time that you have. But I can tell you it was of great benefit to me coming to politics with experience in other things. And Rob's the same. Rob at the cabinet table is invaluable because he comes with real life experience. He's not just talking about, in theory, here's a value. It's here's how this is actually going to work, and here's what we're doing and why it needs to change. So, you know, that real life experience does matter. And I tell young people who are interested in politics to go do things that are interesting. Go find something that you enjoy, and then bring that back to the table. So all that to say, I actually got a call on April the 20th of 2018. Now the election was June the 2nd of 2018. So I got a call on April the 20th, and I won't take you through the whole backstory, it's too long. But they wanted me to be the candidate in Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte. And it was about 3 p.m. I had my feet up on my desk. It was sunny. And I was minding my own business when I got this call. Of course, Premier Ford had gone through the leadership in March. They were starting to fill in the rest of the slots. There were 13 spots not filled in the province for candidates. And so I said, no, I'm not doing it. I don't live in the riding. I'm 5 minutes out. I grew up 20 minutes south of the riding. I live 20 minutes north of the riding, but I knew the riding. I said, no. They said, no, we really, really want you to be the candidate. Finally, I said, well, how long do I have to decide? And they said 6 hours. So I'd run in a nomination, which is a whole nother story, but was really a good experience for me in building a team and all these things. The clincher after those 6 hours was talking to my father, who said, well, you only regret the things you don't do. That's what the measure is. And you wanted to do it before. Why don't you want to do it now? And I went, he's right. So after 7 hours, I've got a call from them. They were expecting a no. I said yes. We were all happy. I'd run campaigns for decades. I'd run campaigns. I was co-chair of organization for Hugh Segal back in the day, what he called the March to Nowhere. Peter Van Loan, when he became federal party president, I ran his campaign. I ran campaigns in the East Coast, some stuff out west. So I knew how the campaign system works. So Saturday morning, that was a Friday, Saturday morning, I simply went to Staples, printed some stuff off, and started knocking on doors. And sure enough, nope. Check. Cycle it. Check. There we go. We're back. So sure enough, I got elected. I was very fortunate to be elected. Landed in finance. I was the parliamentary assistant to finance to Vic Fideli in the first year, and got a chance to see an overview of government. It was the best spot for me because, I still had to find the washrooms and figure out where things were, right? But finances throughout the system, so it was a great spot. And I was there for a year, and then I got asked to be the Attorney General. And I've been there for 5.5 years. For those of you who are political, which many of you are, I've just passed Ian Scott's time in office, which for me is a neat little milestone. We don't talk about that publicly, but Wikipedia says it, so it must be true. So I guess I'm going to dive into some of the topics, some of the things that we're actually working on. So that's my background and where I come from. That's okay. It's back on. I'll let you know if it fails, or we can grab the other one if you want. Yeah, whatever you wish. So, such a fortunate spot to be in the Attorney General's office. And I'll just give you a high-level overview. It is the second largest land manager in government. It is the second largest frontline service in government. It really is the largest legal department in the country, if not North America. Yep, the other one's on the way. And the reason it's so big is because of the way our Constitution is set up, that the provincial government runs the administration of justice, regardless of where the judges come from. That's great. Check. Good?
Do you want the stand?
Yeah, I'll leave the stand if that's okay. Just. There we go. So the reason that it's effectively the largest legal department is because we run the administration of justice, regardless of whether it's the Court of Appeal, Superior Court, or Ontario Court. And we run all the Crown prosecutors. You interact with justice all the time, even in ways that you don't know that you are. And whether that's tribunals, which some of you have a keen interest in, everything from land tribunals to landlord tenant to social benefits, animal care review. You know, there are 15 different tribunals operating. And it's a really interesting, diverse space. And then when they don't know what to do with a particular group, they just put it with the lawyers. So I oversee the professional accountants, I oversee the engineers, I oversee architects, and I think they just don't know where else to house them, so they give them to us. And it's really dynamic. It's really neat. It touches on everything. I oversee the Construction Act, which we've just gone through some significant change in the Construction Act. So it allows me to get into all sorts of policy areas, and I don't really have to stay in my lane too much, which is great. But we're trying to modernize, and COVID made a huge difference here. When I came in, I wanted to modernize how the system worked. Because of my experience, I came to government with a whole bunch of things that I wanted to change. The system wasn't working quite right. It was built by insiders for insiders, built by lawyers and judges for lawyers and judges. It wasn't built as a frontline service, the way that you would start from scratch. And that's everything from the design of courthouses, which we've had shift on, to how things operate, how processes flow, all that sort of thing. It was a very paper-heavy system, like a 90% paper-based system, even today. And up until 2 years ago, you could serve documents by telegraph, but not email. Like it's that kind, like that's how bad it was. But COVID gave us the excuse and gave us the momentum to move forward. And it did two things. One, it changed the relationship between my office and the judges, and it created opportunities for technology. So we went from scheduled meetings every 6 weeks or every 8 weeks with individual chief justices to texting on a Sunday afternoon saying, hey, do you have 5 minutes to solve something? And that continues. And that's with all three levels: Court of Appeal, Chief Justice Tulloch, Chief Justice Morowitz, Chief Justice Nicholas. They're all fantastic and they're collaborative and they're working together and we're all rowing in the same direction. And how that manifests in technology is this. Since the beginning of Canada, because we run the administration, but they appoint Superior Court judges, I appoint Ontario Court judges, they run parallel tracks of administration. They have different back office systems. So we were running more than 5 different computer systems to manage cases and how things flow. Of course, from a customer side, very confusing, even for the lawyers. But they would run these different tracks. Because of the collaborative nature, we've now come together, and with the investment of Cabinet, with Premier's blessing, Peter Bethenfall, who was Treasury Board at the time, we're making a $166 million investment to build one system for all types of matters, which it's all inside baseball. But what it means is that we're doing something that the rest of the world is watching. We've collapsed jurisdictions. The Superior Court and Ontario Court are going to use the same system for both lines of family law, for criminal law, for all the different stuff that they do. And that's like, this is not theoretical stuff. We're going live in Toronto as the first wave in 2025, next year. We've been working on it for about 2 years, and we're going to change how back office systems work for justice around the world. And again, we don't tell the story a lot because people just assume the systems are going to work, but they didn't work. To get a warrant signed by a justice of the peace, if you live up north, police officer would get in the car, maybe drive 2 hours, get to a justice of the peace, give the information, get the thing signed, drive back 2 hours, and all that would take, 5 hours. Now you can do it electronically. Go figure. I mean, I can buy a condo on my phone. So why in the world can't I get a document signed, in real time? But it's funny, the complaints that you get eventually. I've had a couple friends who happen to be police officers say, but I liked my time. True, I get it. So, there's knock-on effects for all sorts of things. But you can make real change. Like, we are in such a privileged position to make real change. It shocked me when I found out that what happens in in fly-in reserves in the north where we have court. What happens is you will take an accused, the victim, a witness or two, and a pilot, and put them in a 6-seater plane and fly them to Sioux Lookout, well out of their community. And when that happens, when you take people out of their community, what happens is very destabilizing. And we all know what the moderating force a parent can have in a household. So to take one of them out is very dislocating. So they fly them to Sioux Lookout. They drive them to Kenora, potentially. They do whatever they need to do. And then they take them back in the same 6-seater. Like, just the thought of that, especially if you're talking like a serious sexual assault or something to that effect, that is bizarre to me. So fast forward, again, we're into COVID and other technologies advancing. And I said, why are we not doing this remotely? Like, why can we're doing so much on screen? We've done over 5 million matters by Teams, by Zoom across Ontario. Over 5 million trials and hearings. So why can we not do this in the north? They said, well, they don't have internet connectivity. I said, are you kidding me? My friend has Starlink on his RV and he can get it anywhere. Can we cost it out? Oh, well, okay, maybe. So they costed it out. We're talking a rounding error for what it costs to put that in. So then the next line of conversation was, we're not sure the local communities will be up for that. We'll have to engage in those discussions. Well, I can tell you, it moved so fast. All 29 fly-in reserves now have Starlink with local operators being trained. So we are seismically changing that experience in the north. That's the kind of stuff I love about politics. It's just fantastic. And it's those things every day. And nobody will remember who did it. Nobody will remember that we never did it before. And that's okay, because that's how government should be. Rob's in there doing stuff that will probably never see light of day, but makes a massive difference. And whether it's doing something or stopping something from happening, so of equal value sometimes. And so it's what an exciting spot to be for me, right? I'm so happy to be in my space, because we can do these and we can do small things or smaller things. We've gone down a road right now of some other bigger stuff, and we were chatting about it. We were chatting about it earlier with civil law review. So the the rules of civil procedure, which is the operating handbook for how the courts work for civil lawsuits and personal injury and all that kind of stuff. I'm very fortunate. Chief Justice Morowitz, Superior Court judge, Chief Justice, he's got a real penchant for updating the rules. I talked about the telegram type stuff. There are all sorts of examples in there of how this works. Nobody's under any illusions that we're working optimally in our court system right now. We need to do some major change. So he and I agreed that we were going to do a 2-year project to go top to bottom in the civil rules. And let's approach this in an entirely different, everything's on the table, everything. So we put together some fantastic volunteers, co-chaired by a judge and by a senior lawyer and all sorts of other working groups. And they're working through that. And we were just chatting earlier about there's some seismic stuff coming out of that. It's going to be fantastic, but it's good for the public because it's going to reduce the cost of litigating. It's going to speed things up. And if you can move at an appropriate speed, which 6 years to a trial is not an appropriate speed, then you can make change. You can actually affect people's lives, that they're not hung in the balance with uncertainty and cost and all that. And they don't settle because they're pressured by the system instead of by the topic. So the civil rules are really, really good. So we're looking forward to that. Now, another interesting piece, and again, I started by talking about drawing your background, drawing your experience, and I'm still a member of the Kiwanis Club in Aurelia. I've been a member for a couple decades, and we run a charity auction, and so we eventually went electronic. And when you go electronic, you have a database. And the back of the database is always an Excel sheet, and you just API over individual parts, and that's what your access or what your other stuff looks like. I know this because I built it with friends. And so I know how that works. So when COVID came along, there's a kiosk in every courthouse or most courthouses that if you're closing a corporate deal, you have to go check at the last minute to make sure there's no outstanding litigation on the corporate deal so that you're not buying a company that has hair on it. And so you do that day check. We call it the day book. And so they'd gone from an actual day book to an electronic kiosk. But when we had to close the courts, you couldn't get at the box. And so if you couldn't get at the box, you were taking risks on closing deals. So I said, we've got to do something. Like, why is this not on the internet anyways? So they gave me a story about a project that was going to take 7 years to do or something. And I said, no, I want to talk to the programmer. So I sat on a Zoom call with four people and said, you know, why can we not? They said, well, here's what we're doing. We're going to build it this and then we're doing. I said, no, let's. I just want like 8 fields, API it. Why can we not do that? Throw it out on the internet. They said, well, we can do that. 11 days. 11 days they did it. And it's now on the internet, and you can check court cases on the internet. They have the capacity, but they need to know that we want to progress. And that's one of the great things about the tone set by the Premier, by people who are working with experience. After that, I was in a meeting about 2 months later, and they said, at the end of the meeting about something else, they said, oh, by the way, we've automated 450 forms. I didn't even know that project was happening. But they were so proud of making progress, and they knew that that's where we wanted to go. And so, you know, it's setting tone sometimes. It's really, and again, the Premier sets the tone on reaching out to people, consulting, you know, getting back to people. I don't know how he does it, Rob. I have no idea how he does it, because he's often not on his phone when you're with him, but he returns every text and every call. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's incredible. He really does. So, but we know that he's doing that. So if he gets a text from you and he flips it to me, I know I have to call you because he's calling everybody else. He sets the tone and the speed, and that's really healthy. It's really good, and it leads to some interesting change because you get the craziest ideas from people, and you go, yeah, I don't know why we don't do that. Let's have a look at that. And so that organic input is really important to a lot of the successes that our government has had. And it's no secret that we've changed course on occasion. We've started down a road and we've said, this isn't the road we want to be on anymore. And he steps up and he says, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. And that's because of the organic input that we get from people. So I just encourage you to keep, you know, obviously a lot of you here are involved and have access to Karen and Rob and others. But for those that don't, encourage them. Like, we actually need that, because what happens in government is you end up in a bubble. And Doug Lewis, my former law partner, told me this. He said, here's what happens. You start off in politics and you really want to do the right thing, and you're there for the right reasons, and you're moving and you're going. But a lot of your input is coming from the professionals in government who have experience and historical institutional knowledge, which is fine. He said, but what happens is when you go home, your friends tell you something. They give you an opinion. And they say, I don't know why you're doing this. And you say, well, here's a piece of information that you don't have that I have. And that works the first couple of times with your friends. And then your friends start to say, you know what, every time I raise something with the guy, yeah, he's got more information than me. So I'm going to stop raising stuff. Because I value the friendship more than poking that bubble. So over time, over a couple of terms, you still have your friends, but they actually stop telling you stuff. And he said, that was my experience. Don't let that happen. And so I am very open with my friend, like, hey, look, I try not to come back to them with, well, here's what I know that you don't know, right? Because they're experiencing it in their own way on the ground. And if that's how they're experiencing it, that's a valid perspective. And we need to integrate that into our stuff. So that's part of how we operate. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about bail. Bail reform, the interplay with us and the feds, us and the other provinces. So you may remember the Premier, our Premier, started a letter to the federal government, said we need bail reform. All the territorial and provincial leaders signed off on it. Off it went to Ottawa. That was in January after they had had a meeting. I got a call on early February from my federal counterpart. He had just been meeting with some of the police chiefs, and he phoned and said, would you be willing to do what's called an FPT, Federal Provincial Territorial meeting? I said, sure, you name the time and place, we'll be there on this. Like, this has to happen. So we went in March. We got everybody from across the country, all the attorney generals, ministers of justice, and we got together early March. Now, this is how politics really works, as you would know. The night before, I sent a note to my friends. Again, I've been in my spot for long enough that I gotten to know the other AGs, and I said, can we have drinks? Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, another one, and said, can we, let's get organized for tomorrow. So we did, and Karen will love this. So we're in Ottawa. We're at the, I forget which pub it was. We're having a drink, we're getting organized, and on the way out, I see Marco Mendicino sitting at the bar. And Marco was the Minister of Public Safety at the time. I said, Marco, it's going to be a great meeting tomorrow. And I like Marco. So he laughed, and we walked in the next day. They knew they had to do something. So they said, what do you want to do? And we literally wrote out the top sort of few things that we thought they could do immediately. We want more. But they actually followed through on those. Literally the piece of paper I got from my guys that we had developed with the others. And the feds did do it. It's not enough. It was merely a start, but they thought they were done. And so we're asking them to do much more. We know we're aligned with the federal party on almost all, if not all of this. Something has to happen with bail reform. Just to be clear how this works, yes, I run the administration of justice. Yes, crowns are independent, but they can only operate by the rules set by the federal government. It's the criminal code. The criminal code has to change. We have to have more reverse onus. We have to have things mean something, whether it's minimum sentencing, standardized sentencing. There are a lot of levers that they can change so that we're not having people go through a court process that quite frankly reinforces a society that we are not comfortable with. So there have to be consequences for things. And everybody's focused on the charter and the rights. And that's okay. You can focus on the charter and the rights. But nothing in life comes with rights and not responsibilities. And that side of the ledger has not been talked about enough. And I'm not going to get into the rabbit hole of the notwithstanding clause, except to say this. It's a button for me when somebody says, well, you're using the notwithstanding clause to override the charter. Well, guess what? Section 33 is in the charter. It's using the charter amongst itself. And the charter has grown as a living tree over time, different rights. Why would Section 33 not grow along with it? And so I think there's a real argument here about what kind of society we want to have. We're going to keep pushing the federal government on this. I don't have to say much about auto theft. Everybody knows it's happening. It's getting more violent. It's organized crime. The police are doing a fantastic job. We're arming them with resources. We have specialized Crown prosecution teams working on it, that with guns and gangs as well. So we're putting the pieces in place, but they have to change the rules. And I not flippantly, but I say, Grand Theft Auto is not a video game. It's an actual criminal charge in the States. Like, we need to do more. So I don't want to get too heavy, but just to say that I don't want to paint a picture that everything's rosy and everything's moving along well. We've got a lot of work to do. We have a ton of work to do. And, it's with support of people like you talking to others and gathering information and supporting us when we make tough decisions. I think that's really, really important. So those are really two hot issues that we deal with a lot and every day. There are others, but we're focused. When I knock on doors in my riding, I knocked on doors last month. I like to go out once in a while and just sort of get a refresh. I'll tell you the one thing that comes up over and over: affordability of so many things, and we're doing what we can with gas tax and WSIB rates for companies and license stickers. People, you have mixed reviews on that, but that's money not coming out of my pocket. And there are so many other things we're focused on: affordability, never raised a tax. You may not know this. The Premier says it over and over. In terms of manufacturing, we have 800,000 more jobs than we had when we took office. And that's when 300,000 had left the province under the previous government in manufacturing. And I love this stat. Last year, we created more manufacturing jobs in Ontario than all 52 US states combined. That is phenomenal. I'm going to stop there. I'm the reason you had to change the format, unfortunately. Rob and I have a cabinet meeting at 1 o'clock that we'll probably do from our cars. But they're a command performance. So I'm going to stop there. Happy to take any questions until we get to that point.
5 minutes?
5 or 10, yeah.
I just want to ask, what would you consider to be your biggest challenge so far? And hoping you don't leave office soon, but what would you consider to be maybe your biggest failure if you couldn't make that achieve, whatever that may be?
Yeah, so I have I think that part of the challenge for me, so I've appointed 114 of the 300 judges. I've appointed 125 of the 300 JPs. I know the system. I know the federal system. I think there are areas of government, and I'll give you another one, where we've outsourced our responsibility, whether it be to committees or neutral bureaucracies. You know, again, Doug Lewis, he's got these great little bits of wisdom. He said the only thing worse than political patronage is bureaucratic patronage. And so we have a responsibility. When the Chief Justice was getting appointed, the Ontario Chief Justice, I won't drag you through all of it, but I asserted my responsibility and said, I will pick who it is and I will interview the applicants and I will solicit feedback, to the point where there was a lot of angst in the judiciary that I would do that. I said, but I'm responsible. So I am going to do that. And guess what? You never even heard about it. So, and we made a great decision, and she's fantastic, and she's well respected by everybody, Chief Justice Nicholas. So I think that's the piece, is putting the decision-making in the right spot to match up the rights with the responsibilities. If we can't adjust some of those dials, the civil rules that I talk about, I can only change a civil rule if it comes from a committee made up of 30 people. It's the only example in government that regulations are written by an outside body. I can stop them, but I can't start them. And so I think that needs to change. I think I need the ability to set priorities for the kinds of changes that need to happen. If I can't do that, I will be very disappointed.
Could you talk a little bit about the auto theft problem file? Like, I assume you have that table, it's not just you.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. So the auto theft file is federal, provincial, again, it's rules, it's borders. Look, we need stronger borders. The imaging machines to look in containers, there are not enough of them. So apparently there's some on order, but I don't know when they're going to get here. Again, it's organized crime. It's very complex. But it's traumatizing people in a way that has not happened before in communities where they brazenly break into a house and to get the keys for the car. It's very, very troubling. We're pushing hard. So we have Graham McGregor, who's the Associate Minister for Auto Theft and Bail Reform. So we've got a real laser focus on this file, and he's working across boundaries with police, with prosecutors, with the federal government, setting a standard for them. So it's a serious issue. We are making some progress with it. It should never have gotten to this point.
Self-representation before the courts is becoming an issue and chewing up a lot of time. Is that something that your department was able to address? Yeah,
so particularly in family law, self-representation, it runs about 70%. We saw during COVID, when we went to online hearings, it actually dropped in the north because they could access legal help in the south. So some levers that we can help in the criminal space and the family space is duty counsel or legal aid. There's some stuff pending, just sort of stay tuned to help with that. But I think we have to build the system recognizing that will always be the case. There will always be a sizable enough, whether it's 40%, 60%, whatever it is, the system has to operate in such a way that a person can navigate it without being crushed by this foreign vocabulary and foreign systems. So it is, and it's something that we're working on with civil rules and legal aid and some others to make it more user-friendly. Yeah. Go ahead, Jerry.
Locally, we choose safety, security, and together with homelessness and mental addiction. And when we call local police, they say, we'll go there, we'll let her say, but our hands are tied. And it's not that their hands are tied that they cannot arrest the individual. The hands are tied is that within potentially 12, 24 hours, the person is back up. And it has to do with Bill C-75, catch and release. How high on the priority list of federal government is this? And are you provincially putting a pressure on this? Because this is a big issue for Ontario municipalities.
Yeah, so we raise it with the feds regularly at each of our federal provincial meetings. Bill C-75 or 175 is enshrining a Supreme Court decision. So it was an acceptance of that decision and a little bit more. We're not happy about that. We don't think they should have done it. We think that they should shift gears on it. That's part of the Graham McGregor world as well as part of mine. But I was raising with Lametti when he was minister long before Arif came along. So it's a consistent drum for us that anything that leads to catch and release is not acceptable.
Thank you.
Doug, thank you for this. We really appreciate taking the time to come and speak with us and telling us about how you're getting government to work and to work for the people that it represents. So thank you.
Right.
Rob's on side with you on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for shifting.
Good job.
Yeah.
Great job.
It's good fun. We're doing a lot of good stuff. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Oh, really good. Oh, thank you. Oh.
How did you guys go tonight?
Yes, we're gonna.
Good job.
Always great.